The one thing this roster of videos all have in common is commitment. Every single person featured here dedicated themselves to a task, completed it, and exceeded everyone's expectations at the same time, including their own. It took years for some, like the man who built the Tunnel of Love, or a few minutes for others, like the woman who conquered the biggest wave. And for others, like safe robbing, it took teamwork. Who are we kidding? All of these people worked really hard, and it shows. Check out the 15 most impressive moments of all time. Number 15. Insane safe robbery. Robbery is serious business, and with all the modern technological advancements in security, very few attempts are successful. But if you know anything about safes, then you know these old-school box with locks are next to impossible to break into. However, it is possible. It just takes the right tools and a lot of patience, like these criminals. Police were after these two men after they broke into a Texas pharmacy on New Year's Eve. Surveillance video caught the 2-hour robbery on camera as it unfolded. At first, the two men were filmed crawling on the floor to avoid motion detectors. After pocketing a bunch of bottles of cough syrup, they left, then returned with a bag full of the tools required for the next big step, the safe. As one of the criminals cut into the side of the pharmacy safe, the other stood guard nearby on lookout. They seemed quite prepared for the robbery as well. The man cutting into the safe even has liquid inside of a bottle to keep the carpet from catching on fire. Safety first, the robber succeeded in breaking the safe and managed to steal $1 million in prescription drugs. Crime doesn't pay, however. Very few robberies go this smoothly. Good thing it was filmed. You want to know a little secret? If you smash the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell, you'll have superpowers for the rest of your life. So what are you waiting for? Time to fly. Number 14. One man plants a forest. Meet the Forest Man, or so he's known in India, and was recognized as such on World Earth Day in 2010 by the government of India. Jadav Paying single-handedly turned 1,300 acres of land into a lush green forest all by himself. It took close to 30 years for the land to turn into a forest. He slowly planted and maintained trees along a sandbar on the Majulai Island, the biggest river island in the world. He began planting bamboo and continued planting other species as the plant started to thrive. Thanks to him, the forest now houses tigers, rhinoceros, reptiles, over 100 deers, monkeys, and several varieties of birds. The government only discovered his forest in 2008 when a herd of around 100 wild elephants wandered through. Since then, they're regular visitors. In his honor, the Molay Forest was named after the Padma Shri Jadav Molay Paying, the forestry worker and environmental activist who saved the island by planting one tree a day for 40 years. The Molay Forest now encompasses an area of about 1,360 acres of forest. That's 15 football stadiums, larger than Central Park in New York City. Over the course of 4 decades, he says he's planted so many trees, he's lost count. Number 13. Bob Beeman's legacy jump. When the announcer revealed the distance to the crowd for his record-shattering leap, Bob Beeman did not realize what he had done. Was this to be a legacy jump for the star athlete? When his teammate and coach told him that he had broken the world record by nearly 2 feet, his legs buckled underneath him, and the rest is history. Beeman covered his face and fell to the ground, not believing the magnitude of his achievement. He shattered the previous world record when he finally broke the sand 29 feet and 2.5 inches from the edge of the takeoff board at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Beeman landed near the far end of the sand pit, but the optical device installed to measure jump distances was not designed to measure a jump like this. That's how far he went. Officials had to measure the jump manually. But the truth was clear. The perfect jump, a leap into the 21st century. The greatest sporting achievement of all time were just a few things the headlines were the following weeks after the iconic jump. He would never again come remotely close. For the longest time, neither could anyone else. His record stood for almost 23 years. Beeman's jump remains the second farthest leap of all time. Number 12. Le Palais Ideal. Ferdinand Cheval, born in 1836, was a French postman who began work on his dream palace in the late 19th century. Apparently, he tripped on a rock in 1879 along his mail route, picked it up, and this is what happened. At the age of 43, with this first rock, he was inspired. So each day he collected stones as he delivered the mail, as many as his pockets could hold. Then a basket, and finally he pushed a wheelbarrow. He diligently continued his construction even after his retirement at age 60. Then he was finally able to devote all of his time to his Pebble Palace. For years, he endured the criticism of the community, but the criticism was eventually turned into admiration, and tourists began flocking to see it. It's a mix of different styles and eras, influences from around the world merging together to create the original castle of grottos with fanciful statues of ostriches, elephants, and bears, mythological figures, religious and historical references, all incorporated into the mind-blowing decor, with no formal training in engineering, masonry, or art. You can walk into it, climb the staircases, wander through the interior, and read philosophy etched into the cement wall. Number 11. The man who tried to feed the world. Every generation creates a game-changing, forward-thinking, hard-working person who contributes greatly to the world. Norman Borlaug was one of these people. By the age of 27, he had a PhD in plant protection, and following that, he revolutionized methods of cultivation and developed a robust strain of wheat called dwarf wheat that adapted well to conditions around the globe. He worked in Mexico in the 1940s and 50s to make the country self-sufficient, and by 1956, the country had succeeded. Soon, he became sought after around the globe to advise countries of how food production could keep up with population growth. So he introduced dwarf wheat into India and Pakistan, and food production increased enormously. The Green Revolution at work. When accepting the 1970 Nobel Peace Prize, Borlaug reiterated that the world still faced problems in feeding people. His Green Revolution had not solved world hunger, but exposed the issue of it, and in 2014, on the 100th anniversary of his birth, it was declared Norman Borlaug Week and was marked by the unveiling of a life-size statue of the man who tried to feed the world in the U.S. Congress building. Number 10. Dashrath Manjhi's Tunnel of Love. The Galore Hills near Gaya in Bihar, India, are a dangerous ridge of mountainous terrain that once separated the settlements from the services of the other side. In fact, many villagers had to trek for miles around the hills just to reach work and schools. However, this all changed with the tragic death of villager Dashrath Manjhi's wife. She was traveling the narrow path across the tall hills when she was seriously injured. The nearest medical facility was over 40 miles away, and she didn't make it. The ultimate tale of man versus nature, the heartbroken Manjhi single-handedly carved a road through the entire mountain in tribute to his wife who passed away. Manjhi set out to make sure such a tragedy never happened again. Using only simple tools, he started chipping away at one of the hills, ridiculed by his fellow villagers and ignored by the government. But Manjhi was bridging services to his village and others like it. So he worked on the road day after day, slowly but surely eroding a passage through the mountain ridge. Eventually, the locals came to respect the newly dubbed Mountain Man, and after 22 years of backbreaking labor, he finished the 360-foot road in 1982. The Tunnel of Love not only cut off miles of travel time, but it allowed for small automobile traffic to use it as well. Number 9. Maya Gabeira's largest wave ever surfed. Brazilian surfer Maya Gabeira officially snatched the Guinness World Record trophy for the largest wave surfed for a female. The previous record holder was herself. That's right, she broke her own record by 5.5 feet, surfing a 73.5-foot wave in February of 2020 at a surfing challenge event in Portugal. Maya set the old record at the same place, surfing the same waves 2 years previous. Not only did Gabeira break the world record again, but the World Surf League also named her the winner of the Biggest Wave Award. That's why she's one of the highest paid big wave surfers on the planet. And for that big wave, measuring a wave that size can take time, a team of experts all had to study the footage to get an accurate reading on how big it actually was. That helps explain why it took months. They used coordinates, scientific calculations, and referencing the surfer's height and board length to determine the size of the wave. And only then did Gabeira get confirmation that she broke the record. The dream almost never became a reality after an accident in 2013 knocked the surfer unconscious in the middle of the water, and she was saved by fellow surfers. Number 8. Oldest woman climbs Kilimanjaro. The Arizona woman climbed Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro, the tallest freestanding mountain in the world, becoming the oldest woman to summit it at 85 years old. But when Anne Lorimore found out that another older woman climbed the 19,341-foot peak and that a man held the record for oldest person to climb it at 89 years old, she returned to Tanzania to do it again and claimed the title once more, making the trip in 9 days. While Kilimanjaro is the tallest mountain in Africa, it's considered a moderate to easy climb, allowing for people of many different ages to enjoy the challenge. Yet the mountain still presents obstacles, mainly because of its altitude. Hikers must take their time to acclimatize, and this can affect hikers' physical and mental abilities. She took the only northern approach to Kilimanjaro, a relatively tough route with a steep final ascent, that's tough for everyone who attempts it. Lori Moore's summit bid got off to a shaky start too. Just before the climb, she had a fall and suffered pain on her side the entire way. Yet, despite the injury, the retired professor bit the bullet and kept going and reached the top of Africa's highest peak. Number 7. Daniel Tammet recites pi. This mathlete from Kent, United Kingdom sees digits from 0 to 9 as having distinct sizes and locations in space. So a number like pi, he sees it. While the average citizen can easily remember the 3.14 ratio, the exact ratio has an infinite amount of numbers. There are now more than 22 trillion known digits to pi. Tammet is able to remember pi's calculation to more than 20,000 digits. He set the European record for pi memorization, memorizing 22,514 digits in just 5 hours. So how does one remember so many digits? He attributed the feat to his ability to see numbers as complex three-dimensional landscapes. He says the numbers even have color, texture, and sometimes even sound. Serious pi memorizers like Tammet are of particular interest for scientists. Is this an innate ability or a learned skill? And are the brains of people like Tammet somehow different? Can anyone learn to develop this talent? Now researchers say they found evidence to support Tammet's claim that his unique perception has helped him. An example of synesthesia. It's a phenomenon in which a certain type of stimulus triggers a hallucinatory perception that, for Tammet, has made him the pi guy. Number 6. Tom Cetas holds his breath. How is it possible that any human could hold their breath for over 20 minutes? And why the average person can't hold their breath for more than 30 seconds or so, and even someone in excellent health is gasping by 2 minutes? Holding our breath underwater till the oxygen in the blood is exhausted, we run the risk of blacking out without warning. But for Tom, it was worth the risk. He broke the world record for static apnea, as underwater breath holding is officially called, in China, clocking in 22 minutes and 22 seconds underwater. This isn't the first time he's shattered records for either static apnea or dynamic apnea, swimming a distance while holding your breath. He started competing in the events after a scuba instructor commented on his breath-holding talent. Since 2000, he's continued to set new marks. He normally preps for an event by not eating for at least 5 hours prior to an effort to slow his metabolism and then filling his lungs with pure oxygen, which can add more than 10 minutes to his time. For now, he owns the record. Who would dare attempt to break it? Number 5. Brazilian Hulk lifts car. Do not mess with bike enthusiasts, especially if you're a bad driver. This angry cyclist picked up and moved a car parked in a bike lane. Why? Because he could. Not all bikers have this kind of strength. Believed to have been filmed in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the man can be seen standing behind the car and holding the bottom of its bumper with both ends. It's not looking good for the vehicle. Cyclists are always at the mercy of bad vehicle drivers, and clearly this Hulk had enough. He remains focused, picks up the car, and continues the job. Sometimes you have to make an example of people's crappy behavior. Naturally, the crowd who witnessed it lost their minds. A number of people recorded him on smartphones as he lifted it up from the ground, and following the incident, the world got to know this big guy's strength. Once the car was out of the way, he moved out of the bike lane. The man made a dismissive gesture with his hand, grabbed his bike, jumped back on the saddle, and rode off into the night. And the crowd went wild. And although it was a small car, which many skeptics pointed out, it's still awesome. Do not mess with a bike lover in Brazil. That's today's lesson. Number 4. 50 marathons in 50 days. In 2006, fitness icon Dean Karnazes took on 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 consecutive days. It began in St. Louis on September 17th, and it finished with the New York City Marathon on November 5th. 8 of the 50 races were conventional marathon races. Since marathon races are typically held only on weekends, on the other days, Karnazes ran the course of a marathon in each state using the help of the staff of each event to run the certified course. He finished the final marathon, the New York City Marathon, on the official race day in 3 hours and 30 seconds. He weighed 154 pounds at the start and 153 pounds at the end. He is an internationally recognized endurance athlete and best-selling author, and he's pushed the body and mind to inconceivable limits. Among his many accomplishments, he's run 350 continuous miles, foregoing sleep for 3 nights. He's run across Death Valley in 120-degree temperatures, and he's run a marathon to the South Pole in -40 degrees. However, his physiological performance defies all convention. It seems as if he can run forever, and his ultramarathon habit has built up his bone density, joints, and running muscles and blood transport system to the point where he can motor along effortlessly. Number 3. Alain Robert's insane climb. Alain Robert, dubbed the French Spider-Man, scaled the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, But unlike the rest of his epic building climbs, he used a rope and harness to comply with safety requirements, but that doesn't make it any less impressive. And would you believe, Roberts is almost 60? The extremely talented rock climber focused his attention on urban settings in the 1990s and has to date scaled over 100 buildings. And when he recently climbed untethered up the side of a 554-foot office building in Germany's financial capital, stunts like this Spider-Man can end up with charges like these: criminal trespassing complaint, the cost of law enforcement operation to secure the area during the climb, and the use of an unauthorized drone to film the stunt. But that doesn't stop Robert. He was arrested in France after climbing up the facade of the tallest building in Paris wearing a silver suit and cowboy boots. And for his attempt in Dubai, it took Roberts 6 hours to ascend the 2,717-foot tower in the United Arab Emirates city, including the tapered spire above the top floors. Number 2. Herbert Nitsch, the deepest man on Earth. He says he feels he is at 90% of physical performance on the ground and 100% underwater, where, incredibly enough, he does not have any limitations, like he feels he does outside of the water. Herbert Nitsch was named as the deepest man on Earth, and for a very good reason. In 2012, in the waters of Santorini, Greece, following extensive training, Nitsch managed to reach a depth of 831 feet, but it did not go as planned. 10 minutes after the dive, he began experiencing serious symptoms of decompression sickness. Following a planned post-dive decompression, he signaled to his support team that he felt much weaker than normal. His condition was assessed as critical enough to require an air transfer to a pre-alerted decompression chamber in Athens, plus multiple brain strokes due to severe decompression sickness. The initial prognosis was that he would need home care and be unable to walk without a wheelchair. However, through extensive rehabilitation, he made a strong recovery. He continues to deep free dive. Herbert literally is the deepest man on Earth. Number 1. The world's longest ice bath. An associate professor at Wayne State University used scanning devices to peer into this Iceman's brain. Meet Wim Hof. They decided to test his brain as he uses his ancient tantric breathing technique, wearing a special suit that circulates cold water around his body. To observe his cold tolerance, he can manipulate his physiology to tolerate the cold. He's also able to increase the release of chemicals in the brain called endocannabinoids, which create a sensation of euphoria to help numb the pain of the cold. For Wim Hof, a Dutch daredevil nicknamed the Iceman, breath control is the basis of his success, not superpowers. He broke his own world record by standing in 1,550 pounds of ice for 72 minutes. He says he owns 6 recognized world records for various extreme feats, including the fastest barefoot half marathon in history, a staggering 2 hours and 16 minutes, and the longest swim while holding one's breath under ice, 188 feet and 6 inches. He's also known for climbing Mount Everest in a pair of shorts, running across the Namibian desert at 104 degrees without drinking any water, and running a marathon in the Arctic Circle, again in his swim trunks. His successes are all feats that he attributes to a special kind of breathing practice.